Ooh, broken is harsh. That is harsh. That is like, then he needs to be repaired. I think he's just suffered a few deep lacerations that have carried over into the team. And so he needs to be sidelined and allow for Jalen Hurts to insert and allow them to see some type of jolt and resurgence of their offense, of energy, something. There has to be a change. But what I don't want people to just automatically write off and assume is, at this quarterback position, sometimes we get caught up into this thought of there just has to be one. Well, when we look at the New Orleans Saints, like, they have found a way to allow teams to prepare for dual quarterbacks. They don't know when they don't know how many snaps Drew Brees is going to have. They don't know how many snaps Taysom Hill is going to have. But what it does create is an opportunity for two guys that have two unique skill sets to get on the field at different times given the situation. And that's what I think that the Philadelphia Eagles need to do. Move on to Jalen Hurts. That does not mean rid yourself of Carson Wentz and shelf him for the year. Use him when you know you need him, but allow Jalen Hurts to give you some type of bolt of energy to go through this offense, allow this team to become galvanized and potentially make a playoff run.
Yeah, man. Broken is harsh, but unfortunately, he's given us the ammunition to be harsh. So, yeah, I think he is broken. I didn't make up the term. Someone in Philadelphia did on the blog. I'm just going to echo it. Yeah, he's broken. He has a fractured psyche, as we would say in my world. That's the diagnosis. A guy who looks at everything as half empty. His confidence is shot. Brian Griese said it after the Monday Night Football game. What's wrong with Carson Wentz? Right between the ears, right there upstairs. And in a world where it's mind over matter, if your mind is shot, everything else that you produce is going to be shot. I'm getting a little bored of talking about Carson Wentz in so many derogatory ways because it's unfair, because I'm rooting for the person. I'm rooting for the player. But me being the analyst, I have to call it like I see it. This is a guy that's been able to use so many different reasons / excuses to why he's in this position right now. But Carson Wentz, you got paid. So one, you are not absolved of guilt because you got paid. Actually, that enhances the criticism that comes your way. Two, if you look at it in your Carson Wentz, why are you regressing in your 5th year? Like, I get it if you're out your prime, or I get it if you're so beat up that you know what, you just can't live up to your own standard. But you are with a quarterback whisperer in Doug Peterson, a guy who took a backup and won a Super Bowl with on your team, and now you're in your 5th year, and you're still regressing. It makes no sense. So I say insert Jalen Hurts for 2 reasons. One, we know because of the cap number, because of the dead cap number, that it's still going to be Carson Wentz's job. Somehow, some way, he's going to find himself in the starting lineup for the next year or 2. Okay, so with that said, you put Jalen Hurts in there. Either A, Jalen Hurts goes out there and does worse than Carson Wentz. And I don't know how y'all play football, but sometimes it felt good to see somebody else do what I was trying to do, but do it worse than me, because then I'm like, I learned from that. It's a real thing. I learned from that perspective. Oh, I ain't going to do that. Oh, bing, the light goes off, and now you start to do it a different way. Just that deep moment to exhale. Or Jalen Hurts goes out there and balls out, actually plays better. You think Carson Wentz's ego is just going to say, oh, let him have a job. Oh, let him be the starting quarterback. Nah, that's going to motivate Carson Wentz. All he needs is a literal timeout, a game or 2. Let him just sit back and collect all the new information that he needs to assess how he's playing, and hopefully you get a better performance going forward.
Yeah, he's struggling right now, and he's deep in it. It is all between his ears. He's having a tough time finding his confidence. But even though he's broken, I don't think you can completely remove him from the lineup. Too much money is tied into it. Too much is invested in him. He has to find a way to work through this. I think the pressure really goes to Doug Peterson, because Doug Peterson, you got to figure out how to do this, because before they signed Carson Wentz to that big deal, I'm sure they went to Doug Peterson. They asked, hey, who do you want? You want Carson? You want Nick Foles? He opted for Carson. Hey, do you think we can win at a high level with Carson? I'm sure he said, absolutely. I believe this is my guy. Where if he is your guy, you got to fix him. And the way that they need to fix him, and looking at Carson play, they got to scale back. They got to simplify. They got to make it easy. If this was basketball, they got to get him some layups and some free throws. He has to see the ball go through the hoop. Now, I can't tell him exactly how to do it. I would say that Carson needs to lean into his athleticism. He is not a guy who is a traditional pocket passer that can deliver dime after dime from the pocket. It's on him. It's on Doug Peterson. They have to craft his plan to really help him find himself. And some of that needs to be by simplifying and reducing the load that he has on his plate.
Well, you talk about it being on Doug Peterson, and I think you're exactly right. You gotta establish some type of running game. When your quarterback is struggling, the way that Carson Wentz is struggling, what tends to happen is, we all do it. Your team is losing. You're the guy. You're putting added pressure on yourself. And right now, Carson Wentz cannot handle all of that. We saw it with Russell Wilson. Should Russell Wilson cook? Yeah, let him cook. But as long as you're cooking, the more you cook, the more pressure is surmounting upon your shoulders. And that's what we see with Carson Wentz. And we saw Russell Wilson start throwing a couple picks. What did they do? They had to scale back. Whoa, let me pull back the reins. Doesn't mean you can't still be the great player that we know that you are, but let us take some of that load off of your plate. And that's what you're talking to, the point you're talking about, Bucky, when you talk about Doug Peterson taking some of that pressure and ownership on him, putting it on him as a play caller. Help your personnel. You have all the opportunity to help and assist every player that you put out there on that field, which is why I say you insert Jalen Hurts in a way kind of like Sean Payton has done with Taysom Hill. Everyone was against it, but you ask any opposing defense that has to prepare for the New Orleans Saints, it's a struggle. Why? Because I'm preparing not only for Drew Brees, but Taysom Hill and his running ability, his athleticism. It's a different dynamic. That's what you need. That changes things up offensively. It changes things up for defensive coordinators when it comes to preparation, and it could potentially equate to possibly a change up on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of he has to stay out there because of the money. I understand business 101, and that's how the game goes. But in the situation where you're sacrificing 51, 52 other guys just for one because you paid him foolishly, doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I don't want the entire squad to suffer just because of the issues of one. Think about it. How many times you been to somebody's house and you saw something ugly on the wall, that ugly-ass painting, ugly rug, and they justify it. Oh, do you know how much it costs? Don't care, dog. It's ugly. It's just simple as that. Like, don't care how much you paid for it. Like, he's not that good. And I keep hearing the same issues or reasons or excuses, how y'all want to call it. It's his offensive line. He doesn't have a good offensive line. Look, I get it. What they've had, 11 different rotations, a carousel. But let's look deeper than just the rotations. Carson Wentz has had the six most clean dropbacks in the NFL this year with 275. Told y'all I'm a nerd. Here's the thing. Where does that rank Carson Wentz in terms of how effective he is in those clean pockets? His passer rating is 83 in clean pocket plays. That's 36 out of 39. Wait a minute, Carson Wentz. So when even they give you a clean pocket, we already know your accuracy is not going to get the ball to the proper receiver. Oh, we don't have receivers. Oh, really? Travis Fulgham is the 42nd ranked wide receiver, according to Pro Football Focus. That's an elite grade, higher than CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy and all these other youngsters that are out there doing well. Oh, you want to talk about the rest of the receiving core? They're not doing so well. Richard Rodgers is balling. You got an elite grade there. Goddard is balling. Zach Ertz, when healthy, is balling. So then you start to say, well, it's the running game. We don't have a running game. Miles Sanders, you don't give him enough touches. But let's talk about those touches when he gets them. 5.6 yards per attempt, second in the NFL. What are we talking about here? Everything with a common denominator of an issue really points back to Carson Wentz. I hate to be this guy, but as I went up the mountain and I went down the mountain, I learned a lot. And one thing that you should know for sure is that most of your problems are with that man in the mirror.
Okay, Marcel, it's like, I like the points that you brought up, but I believe they point to someone else, not Carson Wentz. Even though he is playing like boo-boo, it sounds like the coach needs to figure out how to prioritize their game plan and their play calling. You talked about the running game being good. You talked about Travis Fulgham being effective. You talked about the two tight ends. Dallas Goedert being effective. Zach Ertz, when he's healthy, he's effective. It sounds like it should be on Doug Peterson to figure out, hey, less of Carson Wentz, more of the other guys. that will help the quarterback get on track. And then when I look at this team, I just believe right now Doug Peterson is calling plays. He's not running a system. He's just dialing up plays like we're playing a video game, but he doesn't have a system in place. If they can find a way to have a systematic approach for attacking, I think it will lessen the burden on Carson Wentz to have to play like an elite player for this team to win games.
I like that. I like that pushback because I don't have the answers, and it certainly can't be Carson Wentz is just doo-doo, just boo-boo trash. Like, there's something
he
left.
Is bad.
He's bad, but we've all been there before where you're at the bottom, like the toothpaste at the bottom, and you got to wring it out. You got to squeeze it differently. You got to even use some water to get in there.